Hello to everyone joining in on today's spaces. We'll get started shortly. All right, that was some feedback. We'll get started shortly. Just so you know, this Spaces call is a first for Mint Cash. We intend for this Spaces to be the first of a series, with each Spaces focusing on a different topic of interest to the community. We'll need your help to figure out what future topics will be. So please be patient with us. Because Mint has a very, very small team, so our ability to manage Twitter, Discord, and Telegram is extremely limited. But nevertheless, please leave feedback, leave questions, leave topics you'd like us to talk about. We know that many of you are following the progress of the Mint Cash project because of your past negative experiences with Terra. Please keep in mind that Mint is not affiliated with Terra, and we apologize if our communications have mistakenly implied otherwise. That said, there's clearly a thread of communication between the code base and the overall vision of Mint and Terra, so we want to answer your questions over time. Terra failed for a variety of reasons, but the project team at Mint really believes that the Terra model can be changed and upgraded to address successfully issues of critical importance to financial freedom and social mobility. To start our Twitter Spaces, we're going to pull back the curtain on a critical question at the top of many people's DYOR list. Who is the dev? My name is Annie, and I have the pleasure of introducing you to Daniel Hong, the founder of Mint Cash.
Hello. My name is Daniel, and I co-founded Mint Cash with my co-founder and friend Junho. Just so you know, I'm a little uncomfortable with public speaking, and I'm not so good at responding to questions on the spot, so unfortunately we won't be taking live questions today.
Well, as we do this more often, I'm sure you'll get used to it.
I just wanted to respond to questions thoughtfully, and I don't think I can do that on the spot. That's also why we haven't opened public channels on Discord or Telegram. I really care about your input, but also our team is really small. We just don't have the capacity to manage inbounds because we have so much to do, like operation-wise, and more importantly, we have just a ton of development work to do. So please be patient with us as we slowly scale our team to get to the point where we can do everything we want to. We are pretty much a work in progress.
That's right, we'll work on it. For everyone tuning in, even if we can't take live questions for today, we do want you to leave questions. So again, tag us with questions on Twitter, in the Spaces call, and we promise we will get to them with thoughtful responses over the course of Mint's Spaces series.
Yeah, I do read everything that you post. I'm just so extremely busy. We will respond.
So what has been taking up more of your time recently?
Well, so obviously the team has been working very hard on making sure that the burn drop will proceed smoothly. So building and development takes the most time. Junho specifically has been really a beast. For me, I not only work on product, but I also have been fundraising and working on setting up some core operations for a company.
And how's that going?
I mean, it's a lot of it is confidential, but I'm lucky that people understand the vision of Mint Cash.
So for people who are listening and haven't yet read the Mint Cash white paper, can you give them a high-level summary of what Mint Cash is?
Yeah, so our mission is adding stability to Bitcoin to unlock cross-border and truly global finance. We will accomplish this by supporting currencies from all around the world. We launched in September 2023 with our white paper, which outlines how Mint Cash works. And 2 months later, we announced our burn drop program. And the burn drop program basically will allow you to burn failed Terra USD or UST tokens in exchange for our ecosystem tokens. And once that happens, our next step is to launch our testnet. It will be a preview of our final product. And our final product will support a basket of world currencies and provide, number one, payments features, and number two, savings accounts with reasonable stable yield, which will be denominated in the currency of your choosing.
Great. Well, there's a lot of obviously economic and development intricacy to Mint Cash's design. Again, as we run more spaces, we'll delve more into the details. Today, though, I'd like to keep the focus on the conversation on Daniel and unraveling the mystery behind who he is and what work he's done in the past. So Daniel, I'd like to give the audience a feeling for who you are. For starters, you grew up in Korea, right?
Yes, that's right.
Cool. So one thing I love to ask people in crypto is, how they got into it. When did you first hear about crypto?
I mean, that's a really long story.
Well, I think we got time. I'm sure everyone would like to hear it. What makes your story complicated or long?
Well, so I actually first heard about Bitcoin when it was still a concept.
Well, just so the audience knows and has context, Daniel is in his early 20s. So why don't you tell us, uh, how is it possible that you learned about Bitcoin when it was still a concept?
I was really young.
How old were you then?
I was 8 years old.
Okay, so that's kind of unbelievable. Were you like some kind of child prodigy?
I mean, I don't really like the term child prodigy because it comes with a lot of implications and oversimplifies like a super complicated condition. Okay, so let's put it this way. I was diagnosed with Asperger's and savant syndrome as a child. Well, today these definitions have changed, but anyway, I'm autistic. I'm on the spectrum.
Ah, okay. Well, to be honest, I'm not that familiar with autism. Kind of familiar with Asperger's, but what kind of syndrome did you say you had?
Savant.
Okay, well, I don't want to ask you like invasive questions about autism, but uh
like, yeah, it is totally okay. I don't have any problems or issues talking about it. So, Asperger's is what they used to call a mild form of autism, and obviously, I don't have like speech or intellectual delays as you can obviously hear, but I do struggle with social interactions and quote unquote fitting in, as they say. So, as for savant syndrome, it's basically the child genius condition. I don't think I'm a genius, but I definitely was not a normal kid. I actually first heard about Bitcoin because I didn't have friends at all.
oh, why do you say that?
Well, I learned to read when I was 10 months old.
Are you serious? How is that possible? Like, wouldn't you be in diapers at 10 months old?
I mean, yeah, I actually do remember diapers a little bit.
That's pretty weird.
Yeah. Like I have very traditional Korean parents who, prioritize studying and learning. So they actually taught me English as soon as I started learning to read. So, even though I grew up in Korea, my first language was actually English.
Oh, well, no wonder.
Well, yeah. So when I started school, I couldn't make any friends. It was really hard to talk to anyone about, what I enjoyed talking about.
Mm. In those days, like, what did, I guess, baby Daniel want to talk about?
I do remember being like 5 or 6 and reading a lot about quantum physics.
Quantum physics? So I have some minimal exposure to quantum physics from school, and I probably didn't understand half of it, but it was not the easiest subject to pick up.
Yeah, maybe, but I was really into it. Like I really liked, the theory of relativity, and all Einstein stuff and all that, and reading about, the whole space-time concept.
I don't mean this in an offensive ways, but I can totally understand why it was hard for you to make friends as a kid. So anyway, like what did you do about it?
Yeah, so around that time, Flash games, like you play when those ones that you play online, they were getting really really popular, and I saw other kids playing games on computers, and I was really jealous and wanted to try it out too. Unfortunately, I didn't have a computer at home, so I basically went to a junkyard and built one from parts that I found there.
You built a computer using parts from a junkyard? Well, I guess you're like reading about the theory of relativity at the time, so maybe you built a supercomputer. I don't know.
No. It wasn't a very good computer. It was an Intel. It was running an Intel 83086 from 1993, which is the CPU right before Intel Pentium. So the computer could only run Windows 3.1. I wasn't able to run Flash on that computer for obvious reasons. It was too old.
So, so you built a computer and then you still couldn't play games.
Exactly.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, so what happened was that I finished building the computer and couldn't play the games I wanted to, but found an x86 programming guide in English at home because my dad, used to work in tech. And that's how I first learned to code. I really got into programming and started visiting online forums. Some of my first friends ever were actually made on Reddit.
Oh, really? Are you still in touch with those people?
Well, yeah, we still are friends. All of them are at least like 10 years older than me. I really liked online forums because I could have discussions with people about my favorite topics, and they would be all over the world.
Okay, so the story's kind of coming together. So at this point, you're 8 years old, and I guess you've developed an interest in cryptography, and maybe you started going onto forums.
Yeah, exactly. So when I was getting into cryptography and really like reading and contributing to discussions, and this was back in October 2008. So I was on a cryptography mailing list, and I was one of around 300 people, I think, who received Bitcoin Satoshi Nakamoto's original Bitcoin white paper.
Oh, really? That's pretty amazing. That one of the third, or the one of the you said 300 people, right? Was eight?
Yeah, well, I just thought like cryptography as a concept was really cool.
Did you understand the white paper at age 8? I mean, if you're reading about quantum physics, I guess so, but did it really sink in?
Yeah, like I mean, of course, I thought it was really cool. There were many like technical discussions on the forum at the time, and that particular proposal caught my attention. I did start exchanging emails with Satoshi back and forth up until the Bitcoin network launched in January of the following year.
So that's really interesting. You actually interacted with Satoshi himself. Like, do you? I mean, like, do you know who he is?
Well, I know it's definitely not Craig Wright. I mean, like, I don't really know. I wish I knew.
Well, I guess Satoshi could be a woman too. I mean, people, nobody really knows.
Well, yeah, nobody really knows.
Well, okay, if you received the initial white paper, then I'm guessing you like tried Bitcoin really early. Did you end up mining like a ton of Bitcoin when you were just a kid?
Yeah, it is funny that you say that because actually, yes, I did. I did play around with the Bitcoin client and discovered it was pretty easy to implement proof of work to mine new Bitcoins. So GPUs for non-gaming uses have just started coming out with frameworks like CUDA and OpenCL just starting to emerge. I figured out how to build one of the first Bitcoin GPU miners, and I did run my own rig.
Wow. I mean, that's pretty shocking, but I think obviously you're like you said, you're not really a normal kid. I'm curious, how many Bitcoin did you end up mining?
I mined over 100K Bitcoins.
Are you serious? Like that's like what, 4 billion US dollars at today's prices, like even more before. Why do you even need to, fundraise for Mint Cash? Like you could probably fund this yourself several times over. You could fund like everybody in crypto.
But here's the thing. You know what sucks? I lost the keys.
You lost the keys? How'd you do that? Like did you just like toss the hard drive or something?
Well, I mean, yeah, pretty much. So for me, Bitcoin was really like a technical toy. It was something of interest and something of intellectual interest and not really an investment. So I, didn't really think at that time that Bitcoin would be so valuable and, adoption could be this widespread. I did throw away the computer with the private keys on it, and it didn't really even occur to me that those Bitcoin were still there. I didn't even think about it. But obviously, years later, I remembered. So, when people say "not your keys, not your coins," listen to them. That is very true.
Yeah, but I guess you're just 8.
Yeah, I mean, I was just 8, and pretty much too stupid to realize I was sitting on the wealth of a country. Basically, I did think about it before. I thought about it before. If I haven't lost my Bitcoins, I could have bought a whole country.
That's true. You really could with like $4 billion. That's super crazy. I guess that's one of those things where you just like can't think about it too much, or else you'll get really depressed. On the bright side, I guess given the fixed supply of Bitcoin, then now we know there's like another 100K Bitcoin taken out of circulation. Yeah, this kind of reminds me of that guy who bought pizza with Bitcoin, but just worse, like way, way worse. Did you stop mining after you lost your 100K Bitcoin?
Yeah, so there's actually a story to that too. So maybe there were like 2 or 3 of us on Bitcoin Talk who were, running GPU mining rigs. I was one of them. And Satoshi found out about our rigs and, basically made a post on Bitcoin Talk. And basically what he said was he asked all of us to agree to something he called the gentleman's agreement to the GPU's arms race, quote unquote. And so in response to that, I did agree to stop mining when he posted that.
Well, fair enough. Like with the creator of the thing asked you to stop, then I guess you just have to respect it. And like you said, you kind of viewed it as an experiment.
Yeah, it was. And I just stopped mining after that. It's really sad.
Yeah, it is sad. But, most people never even know what it's like to have an opportunity to become a billionaire. Okay, so now you do have to fundraise, obviously. After mining, did you stick with crypto as your primary interest?
Not really. So by the time I stopped mining, I was about 10 years old. I got into basically jailbreaking iPhones.
Oh, really? Did you have some kind of like huge accomplishment there too?
Well, I mean, I don't know about monumental. Well, I mean, like from a certain perspective, I guess so. So basically, Apple actually tried to sue me. Like by sending over a lawsuit, because like I was releasing some open source software for it anonymously.
Oh, really? Apple sued you when you were 10? You were that good?
I mean, I don't know about good, but I guess like they sued me, so I guess that mattered for them. But after they learned I was a kid, they actually took back the lawsuit and gave me an internship instead. So I briefly interned at Apple when I was 11.
Oh, really? I mean, doing an internship when you're that young is really cool. I'm sure that was pretty exciting for you.
Yeah, it was. And I also worked with Xiaomi for a bit, which is one of China's largest smartphone and smart appliance companies.
Was that a lot later or right after?
No, I was around 14 when I worked there.
Wow, that's an impressive resume. At what point did crypto come back into your life?
Yeah, so I did come back into contact with Bitcoin again to solve a serious problem I was facing. So back in the early 2010s, we didn't have solutions like Slack or Zoom. However, there was enough infrastructure to do dev work remotely online. And I was doing contracting work on the side for American companies, but I didn't have a US bank account. And my payments were too small for international wires either. It just wasn't worth it to go in person to a bank branch for the sender to do like a Swift transfer, especially because like wire fees were like a lot higher in these days. And even Western Union wasn't a good solution, even though it is basically a private payments like settlements network built for stuff like this. And so, we don't really have an option. So guess how people were trying to pay me?
I'm guessing they just sent you envelopes of cash.
I mean, that would have been worth something, but unfortunately, no. They actually sent me like domestic US bank checks by international post, like snail mail.
And you were still in Korea at the time.
Right, yeah, still in Korea. So a lot of these checks, like actually all of them, were not redeemable here in Korea for obvious reasons. And I still have them. I have lots of expired like US bank checks at home still. So, I basically didn't get paid for my work. It was around that time that Bitcoin, started gaining traction and, Bitcoin ATMs started appearing. And I did ask the US companies I was working with to send Bitcoin instead of checks. And eventually I only started accepting Bitcoin for my work. And, of course, when, Bitcoin's, value and price started becoming more volatile, it was no longer usable as a primary payment method.
Okay, so I can kind of see how Bitcoin re-entered your life. Quick aside to the audience, I see some comments about things sounding scripted. That's not entirely false. So as we mentioned at the top, and I don't know if you were maybe on the call at the time, Daniel's not that familiar with public speaking. So for this first conversation, things will maybe sound a bit more scripted with the goal of over time, as we do these more often, we can be more responsive and have more live interaction. And for new joiners, we aren't taking live questions today for that reason, but please do leave questions in the comments. Please do leave questions on Twitter in general, because we will get to them in future calls, and we value that a lot. It just will take time to get thoughtful responses and to be comprehensive about that. But anyways, sorry to interrupt you, Daniel.
No worries.
Okay, so anyways, what we were saying was, Bitcoin's price was really volatile, and then you weren't able to use that as a method of payment anymore.
Yeah, I mean, but even so, I was like, so happy to finally even get paid at all. But like the problems I faced with payments these days, back in these days, is really the reason why I care so much about Midcash's mission. I don't like that people and their talents are valued based on where they're born. And if we can solve for cross-border finance, then we can move to a system where people are valued by their merits and not their connections or ability to get a visa.
So to you, it's a very personal mission.
It is a very personal mission, extremely. The problems with moving money from country to country is it's so stupid, and code can definitely fix that. But the crypto also came back into my life in another way.
And what was that?
Well, so right after I left Xiaomi, there was a project on Bitcoin called Colored Coins. And the leader of Colored Coins, Jimmy Song, asked a Canadian college kid to write their white paper for them. And I was immediately intrigued and, pinged him a couple times.
Okay, so Colored Coins, Canadian college kid, I'm guessing.
Yeah, right. So that Canadian college kid was Vitalik Buterin. That white paper became Ethereum, and I ended up contributing some code to Ethereum and the EVM early on in 2015.
Oh, okay. So that's cool. You were like a contributor in a way to early Bitcoin. You emailed back and forth with Satoshi, and then later on, I guess you contributed directly to Ethereum when it was also very early. So that's really cool. Like that's a really great story of how you got into crypto.
Yeah. So after all this, I did start advising a couple of emerging crypto projects being built on the platform. The one people might have heard of is Phantom, where I worked with Andre Cronje. And the other ones are tiny, and I don't think anyone have ever heard of them. But one notable thing was I was part of a small team called Everett Protocol back in 2019. The project was on Cosmos, and we were actually one of the earliest teams to ever introduce and actually invent the concept of liquid staking.
Oh, really? Okay. So, yeah, I mean, that was really early, and I suppose, yeah, like you would have been one of the first projects to introduce that concept. So, yeah, early to everything is kind of the theme for Daniel here.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, the problem was we were, probably too early. So, like, no one really understood what liquid staking was or why it even matters. And investors didn't get it at the time either. So we tried to keep things running by bootstrapping, and then later, borrowing money from family and friends. Eventually, we ran out of money, and our team was struggling to pay back the borrowed money. We were in debt.
And you weren't the founder of that project, were you?
No, I was not the founder, although the founding team was responsible for pulling me and a couple of others into Terraform.
How did that happen? Why do you say you were pulled in?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, Everett was facing like a funding crunch, and the team couldn't pay back borrowed money. And around that time, Do Kwon cold emailed our team, and that was early 2020.
What was in his cold email?
So he basically emailed a proposal to dissolve the Everett entity, and he was going to have the old Everett team join Terraform as entrepreneurs in residence for a project they were starting. And that project was called Anchor. And in the proposal, the old Everett team would be independent of Terraform Labs, but we'd be paid. And Everett's founding team signed the deal, and suddenly the liquid staking team was working on Anchor, while the rest of the team went off to other projects.
Right. So then you ended up at Anchor. What was your role at Anchor?
Yeah, so I was one of the 3 people responsible for Anchor's core smart contract design and financial system architecture. To name a couple of things I was involved with, I worked on BLUNA, a staking derivative of Luna, Anchor's money market and position liquidations, yield redirection to the depositors, like stabilizing deposit yield rates, DNC token design, and Lido's Anchor integration, which is like the largest liquid staking token on Ethereum today.
So at this point, I think probably listeners might want to ask you questions about all the things you worked on. We probably will save that for a future conversation. Again, for folks listening in, leave questions, leave comments, leave feedback, and we'll try to incorporate, of course, more of Daniel's DeFi knowledge in future conversations. There's a lot to dig in there, and he's quite the expert. So I think something that everyone would be curious about is, how much decision-making power did you have? And, were you responsible for the Terra fallout?
Well, so I need to start with a disclaimer. So the Terraform situation is still under active investigation. So, I will be as transparent as I can be. And I worked on Anchor, the savings protocol, which was separate from Terra, the stablecoin. And I didn't design the stablecoin because it was complete long before I even joined Terraform Labs. And I'm still really upset about what happens there. I did help design Anchor, and our team's original estimated yield rate was around 5 to 8% annually. And so based on our design, the product was supposed to be reasonable and thoughtful.
Well, it definitely wasn't like 5 to 8%. I remember it being something like 20%.
Yeah, I know, but so overall it was kind of like a really terrible experience. So our team, as like the designers of Anchor, were targeting rates that were fairly reasonable. But however, when our core team was basically ignored, so basically what happened was 2 weeks before the Anchor launch, Do basically told everyone that the yield rate was going to be 20%.
Oh, going to be. So he just decided that 20% was the target and that's it.
Yeah, so our whole team was shocked, and everyone said that was impossible on the research team, and not just me. But then he said, if you don't make it 20%, you're all fired. And then he left the room.
Wow. Well, I mean, he sounds like a horrible boss. So your team was threatened with job loss or else.
Well, yeah. So obviously something was not right, and there are some things that I'm still not at liberty to say, but I did think Anchor was becoming an obvious Ponzi, and I left in August 2021 as a result.
Okay, so understood that you can't really talk about everything, but maybe you can tell us what it was like working for Do Kwon.
Well, yeah, so I can probably talk about more things in the future, but as like I mentioned, there is an active investigation going on, and I want to respect the government's efforts to deal with the whole situation and deal with Terra. But yeah, I can talk a little about like working for Do Kwon. It was really hard because he was often drinking a lot. He would be like so hungover that I'll have to call him in the morning, so he'd get up in time.
Ooh, that does not sound good. You had to serve as his alarm clock?
Well, yeah. So we had early morning like cross-chain integration calls with people in New York, and I was concerned that Do would oversleep our calls, so I had to like call him to make sure he was awake for meetings.
Was this a really common thing? I mean, I know Korean drinking culture can be pretty intense, anyways.
Well, I mean, like Korean drinking culture is already intense, but Do was much more intense. I felt like I was being forced to drink. Like Do made everyone drink. Actually, maybe a bit of that was definitely Korean culture, but it was mostly Do Kwon. He had like 5 dedicated fridges.
Sorry, he had 5 dedicated fridges of alcohol?
Yeah, 5 fridges for like crazy expensive strong alcohol, and that's why Terra's testnets were named after alcohol.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't like to drink at all, but I was often forced to. And I was and like after that I was up really late at night vomiting frequently.
Oh, wow. I mean, obviously a lot of people enjoy a bit of drinking culture, but if you don't like to and are forced to, that's really bad, especially if you're vomiting. That's super abnormal. I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, so Do Kwon being drunk was a big problem. He would sometimes drive the team around while drunk.
Wait, really? He would drive while drunk?
Yeah, it was terrifying. I remember being in the passenger seat of his Maserati when Do Kwon said something like, "Yo, brace yourselves. I haven't driven in a while. Prepare to die."
Wow, that's a vivid image.
Well, he would do things like that all the time, and he thought saying this was funny, but he was drunk and accelerating very quickly and ran like I think 5 traffic signals. And like yeah, that day I thought I was going to die.
You didn't get out of the car when you saw he was drunk?
Well, I mean, like I'm pretty socially awkward, so I did mention my concerns around like public speaking before, and how I can struggle socially. So I really had a hard time reacting on the spot.
Okay. That's fair. I guess even someone who doesn't struggle socially in some ways, it would be pretty shocking and you wouldn't know how to react. So, yeah, again, sorry you went through that. Yeah, you almost brushed with death that night. That's super dangerous and illegal, obviously. But you did mention you left in 2021.
Yeah, August of 2021.
Right, August. So I'm sure you were very relieved when you left Terraform. You must have had such an overall bad work experience, it sounds like there.
Yeah, it was quite bad. Actually, I didn't get paid according to the terms of the proposal. Those signs, actually not even signs. With Everett.
You didn't get paid?
Yeah, and I mean, like I got paid a salary, but like not tokens or anything else. Like it was just a base salary. And yeah, like that's also one of the reasons why I care so much about making payments easier. There have been so many times in life where I should have been compensated for my time and my efforts and talent, and for various reasons was not.
So that was the straw that broke the camel's back. You left and then you started working on Mint, right?
Not yet, not yet. So I was still really concerned about Terra and Anchor, and was posting governance proposals to help some users, but none of them passed. Later, I worked on another project and consulted under my own company called Peter Pan Crunch.
Well, that's an unusual name. Why did you call it Peter Pan Crunch?
Well, yeah. So actually, it's a reference to being bullied. So for a long time, people gave me a hard time about like being childish or young. In particular, one guy started nicknaming me Peter Pan because Peter Pan never grows up in the story, and it was an insult and it kind of bothered me. But like later, I thought about it and was like, screw this, and I took the name in pride. Um, took the name in stride. So I wanted to own it instead, and crunch is kind of like crunch like to crush it.
Okay, that's the reason.
Yeah, that's the reason. And while consulting, though, I kept encountering like payment problems again. So I grew frustrated with this like with this continuing problem, and the inequities of labor and value. So in early 2023, I started a firm called LF Research with Junho, who I had met while working on Pylon. So just as a reminder, Pylon was another thing that unfortunately was hindered by TOE.
Oh, I don't. Maybe you should tell everyone a bit more about Pylon. Like, it probably doesn't sound as familiar.
Yeah, so Pylon Protocol was an old project incubated by Terraform Labs. That was Terra's flagship token launchpad product. So on Pylon, you could invest in new projects being built on Terra by staking UST and funding the project with anchor yield instead of directly paying UST. So Juno and I both worked on the project, and Do Kwon came up with the high level concept, but wasn't willing to devote the time or dev resources to the project. So we had to find people to work on this for free on a part-time basis in exchange for future token grants. And one of my super talented friends from New York worked on Pylon for a bit, and has basically pulled in Juno as his replacement. And my friend ended up quitting because he couldn't take the abuse any longer. So actually, it wasn't. It was just me who didn't really get paid. Like Juno didn't really get paid either.
From the outside looking in at the time, I would have thought that at Terra's peak, the whole project team was, like popping champagne and living a luxurious life. But it sounds like pay was a real issue for everyone, at least for you and Junho, right? And then obviously the whole ecosystem collapsed later.
Yeah, it was really painful to see, and the whole situation. So we together kind of bonded in misery, and that's what led to our bootstrapping LF research for the entire year of 2023.
Well, as we've mentioned, you keep getting underpaid, and you obviously lost the keys to 100K Bitcoin, so that's significant. Bootstrapping must have been pretty hard. I mean, you guys must have been working out of a closet.
Yeah, I mean, like, you're probably joking, but it was actually worse than a closet. So we never had our own space until very recently. We slept on couches and shared a single WeWork all access card.
So just to clarify, you said just one card?
Yeah, like we were trying to reduce spend as much as possible. But another reason was like Juno wasn't allowed to work out of WeWorks.
He's not?
Well, yeah, he's too young. Like their policy is to only allow people in over 21.
I didn't realize Junho was that young as well. You barely make the cutoff too, actually.
Yeah, but I mean, we were working on like a super complex project. Like building a wallet that didn't require private keys and onboarding regulated stablecoins through integrated bank accounts. That was what we were working on. But like investors couldn't really understand it, and our project was too technical. It was a little bit too complicated for those without like a deep background in cryptography. And after like really 8 months of building, we had like kind of like the aha moment. So in August of 2023, I was walking with Juno in Seoul when I said, "Yo, I know this sounds crazy, but like why don't we rebuild Terra, but do it right this time with Bitcoin?" And that's how Mintcash started.
Okay, so that's how your journey brought you to Mintcash.
Yeah, and once I said it, it was incredibly obvious. So Terra has this initial goal of rebuilding the financial fabric to disrupt payments with a fully functional Forex swap module to support any currency. But it was the wrong leader and the wrong degree of discipline, and ended in disaster for the huge Terra communities. And it felt right because we both worked at Terraform before, even though Fortuno was part-time and was briefly. And we wished things had gone differently because the product itself was trying to do something important. We wanted to fix it. So we spent 2 months working on designing some core mechanisms in the white paper. We don't really have the time today to talk about it, but two things we paid special attention to were the supply-demand problem with stablecoins and monetary contraction.
Yeah, we're probably pushing up against time at this point, but we should add this to the list of things to talk about in future spaces for sure. So we're definitely going to do more spaces, as we've mentioned before, and this initial conversation is obviously more about Daniel and his background, which is quite interesting. But further in the future, I think the calls will be more technical and will be much more Mintcash focused in terms of, like what development looks like, what milestones may look like, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So like that sounds great. But basically, going back to stablecoins. The short story is that we introduced modified Keynesian central bank monetary theories back onto the blockchain, like taxation and interest rates, and then combine them with proof of stake mechanics built on the Cosmos SDK. I've been looking at this for over a decade, and we believe we can do this better than our predecessors. And again, we really feel compelled to right some wrongs for the old Terra community who genuinely believed in a fully decentralized yet scalable stablecoin.
It's true. I mean, Terra wouldn't have gained the traction and support it did if the concept was complete nonsense. Well, thanks for sharing, the more personal aspect of your story with us today. Even though you're in your early 20s, you actually interacted with some of the most important and controversial people in crypto, right? I mean, you emailed back and forth with Satoshi, you contributed to early Ethereum. I'm going to tell all my friends that I now know a guy who lost 100K Bitcoin. That's crazy. And I think in the future, yeah, I'm sure you'll tell us more about, Terraform when you're able to. And yeah, all this started because, as you mentioned, you couldn't make friends as a kid.
Yeah, I mean, at least I'm glad I have friends now.
That's true. Before I let you go, I think I need to ask you a question that's on the tip of everyone's tongue. When do you expect Burn Drop to launch?
Yeah, right. So I do want to let everyone listening in to, know that our team is extremely talented, and has been working very hard on launch preparation. But you probably didn't know that we only have like under 10 people in total. So I know we've been a bit slower than anticipated. We're sorry for the delays, but we are really committed to delivering quality work. Like it's a really small team for a vision this big. And I think we mentioned this earlier too. We can't be as active on Discord, Twitter, Telegram as we want to be because like we just don't have the resources right now. Everyone is just focused on like building the product and launching product launches. So based on what I'm seeing, with our progress right now, we are targeting a launch date in mid to late February. So coming up really soon. We'll release more information once we are fully ready. So we didn't want to say too much about the burn drop and disappoint everyone, but it is coming very soon. And I'm really proud of our team. And as the project grows traction, we will, of course, need to grow our forces.
That sounds really exciting. So we have a burn drop to look forward to in mid to late February. Thank you, Daniel, for your time. I'm sure everyone appreciates your transparency and open communication. And this is a great start to what will be a ton of spaces. This wraps the first Mint Cash Spaces. Thanks again, Daniel. I'll let you get back to work. You have a burn drop to drop. To everyone listening in today, I hope you feel like you got to know Daniel a bit better. We can't let the spaces go on for too long, so we'll end our chat here today. If anything about Daniel's origin story caught your attention, please tweet at MintCash. Like we mentioned at the top, this conversation is the start to a series of spaces, so we would want your questions. We want you to tell us what kind of topics you want us to talk about. Next time we run the spaces, we'll dig more into the mechanics of the Mint Cash project. So again, leave us questions so we can prepare thoughtful answers for you. Thanks so much for joining, and we will see you all next time.